If you're watching this, you're probably very tired of being so good at your job, but not good enough for that promotion. You're smiling, but you're done smiling through the pain of watching people with half your competence, half your experience just get promoted ahead of you. Leadership doesn't start when you get the title. Leadership starts way before the title comes knocking. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 7 ways to mentally position yourself for leadership before anyone gives you the title. And I'll be using the leaders framework to just weave these 7 pillars into your day-to-day habits so that it's your natural best next step when the position comes knocking. Hi, welcome back to my channel, and if we are crossing paths for the very first time, my name is Nancy. I'm a former airline professional turned workplace leadership trainer. I've equally authored books centered on leadership and its greater impact on your bottom line. So you'll mostly find me on this platform discussing topics on matters of leadership, professional growth, career advancement as you endeavor to protect your mental and emotional well-being. So if you are in a leadership role or you aspire to take up one soon, I believe my kind of content will resonate with you. Kindly consider subscribing, press that notifications button on your screen and you will receive regular updates whenever I release a new video. Thank you so much for joining and growing with this community. I do not take it for granted. You don't lack leadership potential. You lack leadership conditioning. Just that shift that shows up in your small day-to-day choices, your decisions, how you see yourself, how you show up even when no one else is cheering you on. These practices are either preparing you for your next role or they're keeping you stuck in your current one. So if you're leaning mostly towards stagnation, if it's slowing you down in your role, let me show you how to change that so that when the next opportunity comes knocking, you're not just hoping that you are ready, you'll actually be ready to be picked. And I'm going to start with the letter L. Let go of the mental noise. Most people are not tired of their jobs. They're tired of the mental chatter around those jobs. That voice in the head that makes you read and reread an email even 6 times before pressing send. And then you still think that you sounded too harsh, or too soft or too emotional or too something. That voice that panics when someone says, we need to talk. And suddenly you start thinking, over all the sins that you may have committed and which one would cause the most damage. That voice that makes you replay over and over every meeting for even 3 hours, just wondering, did I talk too much? Did I interrupt someone? Did they think that I didn't know what I was talking about? Did I stay in my lane? This is the kind of noise that can actually make you shrink yourself to avoid being misunderstood. It's the kind of noise that can actually get you apologizing for things that are not even your fault. You just ask yourself, how many decisions have you made lately from a place of confidence and how many have you made from a place of fear? And you're going to notice that you're not getting tired from your work. You're actually getting tired from thinking about your work nonstop. Letting go does not mean that you suddenly stop overthinking or the thoughts automatically disappear. It just means that those thoughts don't get to control your behavior anymore. And this means refusing to let fear be the loudest voice in the room. You're challenging the chatter before it grows roots. You don't want to operate. You do not want to operate from internal chaos. So when the noise comes knocking, just ask yourself, what is real? What exactly am I dealing with here? What am I imagining? Can I tell when it's fear talking? Can I tell when it's confidence talking? What are the clean facts? This is you separating wheat from the chaff. You're separating what actually happened from the story your mind is creating about what happened, about it. And you're prioritizing your capabilities and skill set over the fear that is looming in your mind, Most of the stress, most of the fear, most of the overwhelm that we feel at work doesn't come from the situation, but rather from the interpretation that we have of the situation. For example, your boss replying with a short message, it doesn't mean that they're disappointed in you. Silence in a meeting doesn't mean that your idea was stupid. Someone else getting promoted doesn't mean that you're not leadership material. Those are just stories. They are not facts. And if you look at it that way, little by little, your mind is going to start working with and not against you. Leadership is about leading yourself first. The letter E stands for elevate yourself image. Feeling competent is not the same as feeling like a leader. You can be the most capable person in the room and still not see yourself as the one who should be promoted. Have you been downplaying your achievements, so you don't come across as braggy? Have you been waiting patiently for people to come and validate your potential? All the while, those who have half your talents, half your expertise, just step into opportunities that you have talked yourself out of. In your department, maybe you've been the reliable one for years and people know you as the high performer, the one who gets things done. And you've even heard people say out loud just how great you are at supporting roles. That's corporate language for please stay where you are. People cannot elevate you if you haven't elevated your self-image first. Just imagine sitting in a meeting and you watch someone else present your idea, so confidently and proudly because you are too shy to pitch it yourself. You don't need one more degree. You don't need one more certificate. You don't need one more sign that you are ready. This right here is your sign. If you're great at being the go-to problem solver, then you might as well be the go-to leader in that field, in that department. Leadership is 80% identity, how you see you, and I read somewhere that how you see yourself decides how you show up, and how you show up decides how others are going to treat you. I believe they have a point. If you see yourself as someone who belongs in the room, you're going to show up as such, someone who adds value. Your body language is going to follow suit, and you'll consciously check yourself when your posture starts betraying your mind. You're going to find yourself taking up space when you show up in rooms. You're going to pull your shoulders as far away from your earlobes as possible, looking people right in the eye when addressing them. And the idea here is to see yourself as capable before others do. And you'd be so surprised at how big a part your self-image plays when it comes to deciding on your opportunities. Being in leadership is automatically going to put you under scrutiny. You're being watched by your teams and your peers alike. And this means that whatever you do will actually add into or remove from your credibility cap. So you want to be safe with who you are and be confident enough to show up for those positions, criticisms notwithstanding. Sharing is caring. Your brilliance is actually going to help others as long as you're rooted in the right values like humility. The letter A stands for act like the leader you are becoming. If you're guilty of waiting for permission to lead, you wait to be introduced as the project manager, for example, before you take initiative, or you hesitate to voice your thoughts because you're not officially the one in charge, or you stay in execution mode, because it feels safer for you than stepping into visibility. This particular reflection is for you. Promotions don't create leaders. They actually confirm the leadership that people have already seen in you. So here is your call to step up and step out of execution mode and into influence mode. And if you've been operating in the background, religiously taking instructions, doing the work but not getting any credit, you've probably been giving solutions privately but staying quiet in the actual meetings. It's time to change that. It's time to start letting your contributions be felt. If you believe that you have a solution that will be beneficial to the entire team, to the entire organization, don't hesitate to speak up just because you're not the leader yet. You want to commit to saying one thing that you normally would have kept to yourself in a meeting or in a conversation. Offer suggestions. Just one brave sentence a day is going to build your leadership voice. And then for the next 24 hours, try catching and removing phrases like, sorry to bother you, I just wanted to check, or I'm not sure, but this might, maybe this might be stupid, but in their place, try using phrases like, following up on X. Here's what I'd suggest, or let's clarify this. This is going to subtly rewire people's perspective of your authority. And also consider what you need to prioritize in relation to the outcomes that you expect from your day-to-day routines. Like whenever you encounter a challenge, ask yourself, how would a leader handle this? Tiny leadership acts are actually going to build a huge presence. So volunteer to summarize the discussion, clarify the next steps, present a solution instead of updates. These are opportunities to step up without waiting. And they are, they're the kinds of practices that are going to build mental leadership muscle quietly, internally, and consistently. The letter D stands for detox from comparison. Comparison is a quiet confidence killer for so many people. You look at colleagues that seem to naturally, they're natural, they look like they're naturally confident, and you wonder why you can't be like that. You scroll on LinkedIn and suddenly you feel like you're behind in life. You see someone get an opportunity and that you probably deeply wanted, and your brain just concludes, maybe I'm not enough. But you never see the full picture. You never know what is happening behind the scenes. They might have a mentor who's fighting for them behind the scenes, and they keep pitching their names in rooms where decisions are made. Or they might have been trained differently from you. They also might have privileges, networks, or visibility that you were not given, and that's okay. They might even have been chosen for reasons that have nothing to do with merit. It happens, but it is quite unfair to compare your journey to someone who's running a completely different race. Comparison is a trap. Comparison is a trap. Your lane is your lane. Comparison is going to have you constantly looking outward for validation, and then you downplay your progress because someone else seems further than you. And before you know it, you'll be allowing someone else's timeline to be making you feel like all sorts of bad, all sorts of uncomfortable. The reality is you have your path, you have your timing, and you have your development, and it's not late, it's customized. So the moment you stop comparing, your confidence is going to stop bleeding. Leadership requires emotional independence, just that ability to stay rooted in your values instead of reacting to people's moods, to politics, to opinions. It means that you can actually hold your own center when things around you feel chaotic, unfair, and sometimes even uncertain. And the moment you start relying on external approval or constant reassurance, you're going to lose that ability to make grounded decisions. But when you're emotionally independent, you're going to notice that you don't shrink because of comparisons. You don't crumble under criticism, and you're not going to be letting pressure dictate your confidence. So consider leadership a personal evolution and not necessarily a race against anyone. The letter E stands for establish boundaries to protect your peace. This one is a hard one, especially if you're the dependable one. You're the fixer. You're the one people run to when they need to dump their last minute tasks. You probably normalize just saying yes even when you're drowning. You respond to messages during your lunch break, during your commute, during your doctor's appointment, and then you wonder why you're always exhausted. These are the people who give and give and give until there's nothing left to give. And you're going to convince yourself that you're doing it all to be and to stay professional. But deep down, you know that it's not about that. You know that saying no feels more dangerous. It feels like it's a bit uncomfortable for you. So you prefer to stay safe, and you're going to tolerate microaggressions because calling them out is going to put you on the hot seat. Boundaries are not a luxury. Boundaries are your power base, and the one sobering reality is that you can always be replaced in that role. You can be replaced in that organization. So when you notice that you want to rise, but you're too exhausted, you want to lead, but you're too drained, you want bigger opportunities, but your emotional bandwidth is on life support, this may be a good time to cross-check your boundaries. Boundaries are going to stop you from being pulled in different directions into everyone else's chaos. Boundaries are going to give you the mental margin to think, to plan, and to lead. So start by communicating your limits, just with clarity. Like, you don't have to apologize. For example, I'm available for this tomorrow morning. This statement is stronger than, sorry, can I try to squeeze this if you really, really need it today? This way you stop overextending yourself just to stay likable, and then protect your non-negotiables by honoring them yourself first. Like, if your boundary is no work after 7 p.m., but you still check your emails at 9 p.m., others are going to follow your lead. Boundaries collapse when you break them. The more consistent you are, the more others are going to adapt to that new standard. Just bear in mind that you cannot position yourself for leadership if your energy is collapsing. Your peace is not optional. The letter R stands for rewire your response to pressure. Leadership does not remove pressure, it actually multiplies it. They always say, to whom much is given, much is required. When you take up office, the way you interpret pressure becomes everything. Like, does your heart race when someone challenges your ideas? Does one piece of criticism keep you tossing and turning for a whole week, sometime? Are you avoiding opportunities coming your way for fear of not being perfect? When you start seeing pressure as feedback instead of danger, your emotional world is going to automatically transform, and you're going to find that your mind will be directed to what needs your focus, or something that really, really matters in your role that you keep sidestepping. The plan here is to shift from thinking along the lines of I want less stress to I want a healthier response to stress. And one of the best ways to rewire your response to stress is to slow the moment down before your emotions speed it up. Pressure can make your nervous system to just go into overdrive, into an all-time high. Your body tenses up, your thoughts go into different directions, and you feel that strong urge to just respond instantly, sometimes with very unprofessional words, but this is often out of fear. So when you sense that you're checking into that dark zone, into that stressful zone where there's too much overwhelm, start practicing the intentional pause. I live in France, and one thing I've noticed is you can only drive between 30 and 50 kilometers per hour inside most of the villages. So when you come in at 70 to 110 kilometers and you miss the sign that you're about to enter a village, you will have to use all the force and the strength that you have available to slow down just to catch up with the required speed limit. So try doing this mentally. When the urge to respond is so hot and so strong, count 10 seconds before replying. Breathe deeply and ask yourself, what is truly required here from me? Is it urgency or clarity? Will letting them have it all, be beneficial to anyone, or is it going to cause more damage? And this simple shift is going to stop you from emotionally responding to what you perceive as threat, and it's going to train your brain to operate from a place of calm and not survival instinct. And then, for what it's worth, you want to separate your identity from the outcome. Start looking at setbacks as data, not verdicts. A mistake is information about process, not proof that you're inadequate. A correction is guidance. It's not humiliation. High stakes don't mean that, they don't mean that you are unqualified. They just mean that you matter enough to go through the heat. And the moment you detach your identity from the result, pressure stops attacking your confidence and starts sharpening your competence. You're not in leadership to avoid pressure. You're in leadership to regulate through that pressure. The letter S stands for speak your value out loud. And this is the final shift, and probably the most uncomfortable one for most people. This is where you get to control your narrative. In most organizations, decisions about promotions, most of those decisions happen in rooms where you're not invited, So if you don't express your contributions clearly, consistently, and in a language that aligns with the priorities of that organization, people are going to fill in the gaps, and they're going to underestimate you by default. So the call here is on you to manage perceptions, create proof of your impact, make it easier for the decision makers to argue for you, to vote for you when you're not in the room. And it's that shift from, I hope they notice me, to I consciously and intentionally shape how my work is understood and valued. And this has more to do with professional positioning and less to do with your self-esteem. The best place to start is to translate your achievements into business outcomes. Sometimes we're so stuck describing what we did, while leadership is calling on us to describe what it cost. For example, instead of saying, I organized the project timeline, try saying, I redesigned the project workflow, which reduced delays and helped us deliver 2 milestones early. This automatically reframes you from a task executor to results driver. And you're moving from talking about yourself to connecting your value to the organization's goals. That's influence. And then, in place of having, just random bursts of confidence, you want to create predictable visibility systems. Something like, instead of waiting for the big wins to happen, intentionally build habits that are going to keep your value top of the mind without overexposing yourself. This is where you present solution-oriented suggestions in meetings, not just detailed work reports. You share insights and lessons learned in leadership forums. You offer to debrief challenges instead of just silently fixing them. This is what is going to create a consistent trail of evidence that positions you as someone who thinks at a leadership level. And sometimes, silent excellence can actually be invisible, but then spoken value becomes your strategic leverage. I hope you received value from this video, and if you did, please let me know in the comment section what spoke to you the most, what resonated with you, and if you haven't already, just consider joining this community. Kindly consider subscribing. Press that notifications button on your screen and you will receive regular updates whenever I release a new video. Then if you know someone who stands to benefit from this kind of content, please don't hesitate to share with them, the video. And also take a moment to have a look at this video right here on the truth behind emotional leadership. It's going to give you insight. It's going to give you insight on some aspects that I've discussed in this particular framework. Thank you so much for your company and see you on the next one. Bye.